If your relationships keep failing, you've probably run through every explanation for it. Wrong type of person, wrong timing, or even bad luck. But what if none of that is actually true? What if the problem was never really about who you were choosing or when, but instead it was about what you were carrying into it before they even showed up? Now, I'm not saying it's all your fault, or at least not in the way you're probably thinking. But from what I see, working with women on exactly this problem, the pattern isn't coming from the relationship itself. It's coming from what you're bringing into it. Your energy, your internal pattern that shapes every dynamic you create, regardless of who the other person is. So in this video, I'm going to walk you through what's creating that pattern, so you'll be able to see exactly where it's coming from and what to actually do to start having the healthy and fulfilling relationships that you deserve. Let's get started. So that pattern, the one that keeps showing up, regardless of who you're with, it actually has a very specific explanation. And this is where the science comes in. And I'll start with the basics because I like to keep things simple and uncomplicated. When we say thoughts are energy, we're not speaking metaphorically, we're being quite literal. Every single thought you have produces an electrical signal in your brain. Neurons fire, and when neurons fire, they generate an electromagnetic field. And that's not a theory, that's measurable. That's why EEG machines exist. They literally pick up the electrical activity of your thoughts from outside your brain. And here's where it gets interesting. The Heart Math Institute, which is a scientific research organization, has done extensive studies showing that the heart also generates an electromagnetic field. And a massive one actually, up to 60 times more powerful electrically than the brain, and up to 5,000 times stronger magnetically. And this field radiates outward, and it can be detected several feet away from your body. So when you're walking around carrying unresolved hurt, resentment, or the quiet belief that your relationships always end up in the same way, you're not just feeling those things internally, you're broadcasting them, and the people you're in a relationship with are picking it up, even if neither of you realizes it. This is why two people can sit down and talk about something simple and somehow end up in the same argument they've had 100 times before. It's not just the words, it's what's been running underneath them, and probably for a lot longer than you realize. I want to take this deeper because this is the part most people never hear, but I think changes everything. Most of us operate on the assumption that our thoughts are just responses to what's happening around us. Something happens in the relationship, we have a thought about it, we feel something, and then we respond. But neuroscience tells us something very different. Your brain has something called neuroplasticity, and this is the brain's ability to literally rewire itself based on what you think repeatedly. Every thought you think creates or strengthens a neural pathway. The more you think a thought, the more automatic it becomes, and the more hardwired it gets. And so here's the problem. If you've been running thoughts like, I always feel unheard, or people always leave, or I give everything and it's never enough, you haven't just been thinking those things, you've been building them into the actual architecture of your brain. And your brain then goes looking for evidence to confirm what it already believes. This is called confirmation bias. Your subconscious literally filters your relationship experiences to match your dominant thoughts. So it's not that you keep attracting the wrong people, it's that your internal pattern keeps recreating the same dynamic, regardless of who the other person is. And you don't even know you're doing it because most of it's happening below conscious awareness. This is why you can know something intellectually. You can read every book, go to therapy, watch every video, and still find yourself in the same argument because the pattern isn't living in your logic, it's living in your nervous system. And once you understand where in your nervous system it's living and why, that's when it actually becomes something you can work with. And this is actually where it starts to get really interesting, because this is where the science and the energetics meet, and where most people are looking in completely the wrong direction. When something triggers you in a relationship, say when your partner says something that automatically makes you react, most people look at what happened. the event, the person, or the words that were said. But these are the wrong things to focus on. The trigger is not the thing. It's actually the signal. It's your energy system pointing at something unresolved. Think about it this way. Two people can be in the same situation. Their partner cancels plans last minute. One person will feel a bit disappointed, communicates it, and moves on. The other will feel abandoned, even though how they might express themselves can be completely different, by either holding it in or by completely losing it. And suddenly, it's not about the canceled plans anymore. It's about every time they've ever felt like they didn't matter. So even though it's the same external event, two people can have completely different internal experiences. It's the story it activates and what's already unresolved underneath it. And so when you start looking at your triggers in relationships, you need to start seeing these as signals, because you can start to get incredibly precise about what's actually running underneath your surface. In other words, wherever you have a charged response, that's energy that's been stored there, and usually for a long time, and often going back to something that happened long before you ever had the awareness or the language to process it. And that stored energy doesn't disappear. It keeps broadcasting, and it keeps shaping every dynamic you create in every relationship. Because when it comes down to it, you don't attract what or who you want. You attract what you are, or the energy you're carrying and broadcasting. So when you understand this concept, and I mean really understand it, you stop asking what's wrong with my relationships and start asking what is this actually pointing at within me, which is a completely different way of seeing things, and it puts you in the position of being able to do something about it. And this is where I need to be very clear about something, because you've probably heard people say quantum physics proves the law of attraction. And honestly, that's a whole conversation on its own. What I want to focus on is what the research actually confirms, because it's more straightforward than people make it, and it's directly relevant to what's happening in your relationships. Your thoughts have a measurable impact on your body and your biology. Chronic stress changes gene expression. Prolonged negative emotional states suppress your immune system. And the placebo effect, which is literally a thought producing a measurable physical outcome, is real enough that every single medical trial in the world has to control for it. So think about what that means for your relationships. If you're consistently operating from a place of fear, and this can look like anticipating rejection, bracing for conflict, or expecting to be let down, your body is living in a stress response. And a body in stress doesn't communicate well or listen well, and it certainly doesn't trust easily. Instead, it reacts and it protects, either by pushing away or holding on too tight. And again, none of this is happening at a conscious level. It's happening because your nervous system is doing exactly what it was wired to do, which is to protect you from a threat. And it continues to do this even when the threat may no longer even exist. So that nervous system response isn't just affecting how you feel in the moment. It's also influencing your assumptions, and it's shaping every conversation you have and every dynamic you create. Which means the question isn't really whether your internal state is affecting your relationships, because it clearly is. The real question is what's actually driving that internal state, and whether it's something you can change, which is exactly what I need to talk about next. So what does this actually look like in real life? Let's say you grew up in an environment where love felt conditional. And what I mean by that is you had to earn it, achieve, act responsibly, and you didn't feel like you'd be loved without performing. Your nervous system learned something from that. It learned that relationships aren't safe, and it even learned things that weren't necessarily true. Like, if things are going well, then something's probably about to go wrong. And so now, as an adult, even when you're with someone genuinely good, someone who isn't going anywhere, part of you is still waiting for it to fall apart. And that waiting is your energy, and it's broadcasting. You might have been there yourself, pulling back just when things get close, or picking fights when everything is actually fine. Or you can actually find yourself being drawn to people who confirm what you already believe, that love is complicated, painful, or unsafe. This isn't a character flaw, it's biology. Your prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for clear thinking, empathy, and emotional regulation, literally goes offline when your stress response is activated. So you can be deeply self-aware, highly intelligent, and genuinely wanting a healthy relationship, and still keep recreating the same dynamic because the energy underneath hasn't shifted. But when that internal state does shift, when you genuinely feel safer and more worthy, your relationships start to organize differently. And it doesn't happen because you found the right person. It happens because you changed what you're broadcasting, and therefore what you're available to receive. This is what you call coherence, which is what happens when your thoughts, your emotions, and your physical state all tell the same story. And coherent energy creates relationships that feel genuinely different. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. This isn't a one video fix. The patterns that are running in your relationships have been building for years, and sometimes for generations. You can't override them with a week of affirmations, but you can start, and starting is everything. The first thing is to become a witness to your thoughts rather than a passenger to them. Most people don't actually know what they're thinking. They're only aware of about 5% of their mental activity, and the rest is just running on automatic. So slow down enough to notice. What's the loop? What's the story? What does your inner monologue sound like the moment a conflict starts? The point isn't to judge it. You just want to see it because you can't change what you can't see. The second thing is to stop trying to think your way out of a feeling. Remember what I said about the nervous system. The pattern isn't intellectual, so logic alone won't shift it. You have to go through the body, and one of the simplest things you can do is deep abdominal breathing. Not shallow chest breathing, but slow, deliberate breathing that actually activates your parasympathetic nervous system and starts to bring your body out of that stress response. Meditation is another one, and I actually have a whole other video on the meditation on twin hearts, which goes into this in a lot more depth. I'll link it in the description below, and I highly recommend it. It's an extremely powerful and cleansing meditation that flushes out a lot of the negative thoughts and emotions we accumulate on a daily basis. And the third thing is to work at the identity level, not just the behavioral one, because if part of you still believes that you're the kind of person who always ends up in the same dynamic, you'll keep recreating it, both consciously and unconsciously. So the work isn't to fake a new mindset. It's to genuinely and gradually shift your self-concept at the level it's actually held. And that takes time, it takes consistency, and honestly, it usually takes support. So let's bring this back to where we started. Your thoughts are not just mental activity, they're energy, and that energy is directly shaping every relationship you have. Which means the conflict that keeps finding you isn't about the other person. It's about what's running inside you and what you've been broadcasting without even knowing it. Now I know that might feel confronting, but I want you to hear it as the most empowering thing you can know, because if it's coming from you, it can be changed by you. And it's not about being perfect or having it all figured out. It's about raising your awareness of what's actually running underneath and starting to make conscious choices about what gets space in your internal world. Because when you change what's happening inside, truly at the level it needs to be changed, your relationships don't have a choice but to follow. And that's not just a theory, that's physics and neuroscience. And it's the most empowering thing you can understand about yourself. You are not a victim of these patterns. You're the creator, and the moment you truly understand that, everything will begin to shift. Thank you so much for watching. If you found this video helpful, you need to watch my other video, You Don't Get What You Want, You Get What You Are, which goes even deeper into how your identity is what shapes every relationship and result in your life. And before you go, if what we've talked about resonated with you and you feel that you're also running these patterns, I want to invite you to find out more about Evolve. Evolve is my 7-week one-to-one coaching program where we go deep into identifying and changing your patterns at the root. So if you're ready to stop having the same argument in every relationship you've ever had, the link is in the description below. Until next time, take care, start doing the work at the root, and always stay inspired.